Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Ellie Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side.
All right, welcome, Elon. How's it going?
Is that it? That's the beginning?
That's it, welcome. I'm sitting here with Elon Gold, comedian. I always wanted to say welcome, Elon. It's like Elon Musk, like that's my dream.
Thank you.
I'll take it. I'll start.
So I am the second choice of Elon's that you had here on the podcast. Well, it's exciting to be here, even though this is, from what I understand, a very serious podcast. I'm used to doing these goofy comedy podcasts, and it's going to be very difficult for me not to, for example, even just go into a Trump impression.
Which, by the way, I do very well. I think I do it better than anybody. I think nobody does it better than me.
But I'm not going to do that because what we're doing here is serious talk.
That's correct.
Can I open with a story that just happened last night?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Just last night this happened. This is a fun little story. It's not a great story. I'm prefacing it and giving it too much hype, and then you're going to be like, that was the story? But it's a beautiful, small, personal story that just happened to me last night.
Is it your first time telling it?
It's my first, well, it happened last night,
Right.
and then I went to sleep, and now it's the morning.
Okay, good.
So I haven't shared this with anybody
Hasn't been
yet.
rehearsed.
Yeah.
I like this.
This is not rehearsed.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And it involves, what's the most important thing on earth? Family. I always say my top three, it's God, family, comedy. Those are my priorities of life. That's everything to me. That's all that matters in the world, those three things. And there are, sub-categories within each of those. You know what I mean? Like family also includes friends and community, and comedy includes different things and work. But this is family. So I have 4 kids, boy, girl, and my second is 19. Her name is Audrey, and she's been dating this kid named Benji. Beautiful boy. Like, you couldn't, if I would type in what's the perfect man to marry my daughter, and then it would just be a checklist of things. He just checks it all. So it's like, literally my wife last night texted me. I didn't even tell her a lot of this story, but I just shared her some of what was going on. She said, man, are we lucky? Like, just so lucky. Because all you want in life is for your kids to have good lives and your kids to be happy. It's all you want. It's all you care about. So the best way to have your kid be happy is finding a match, a soulmate that... I have a joke in my act. I say, I don't wear a wedding ring, because if I wear a ring, how am I ever going to find my bashert, my soulmate? If I advertise I'm married, how am I going to, you know what I mean? So, but really finding your soulmate is everything, I always tell young folks, a lot of tangents here already.
Yeah.
I tell young folks, teenagers, people in their 20s, there are 2 decisions in life that will affect and decide whether you will have a good life or not. You just have to make 2 decisions, and it's what you do and who you do, because you're going to spend your days doing what you do and your nights trying to do who you do. And that's a little bit of a joke, but the real thing is that's life. Your life is career and family, and it's like, if you choose one of those wrong, if you have a terrible spouse, but you have a good job, well, then half your life is good, but the other half is full of tsuris, as we say, and issues and problems. And of course, if you have an amazing wife and family, but you go to work every day and you're miserable and you're sitting there going, what am I doing here? And you're looking at the clock and you're so unhappy. Yes, you could look forward to going home, but that's your day, every single day. You have to make both of those decisions to have the ideal, ultimate dream life. So anyway, Benji. So this kid, and she's known him since he was I think they were in grade school together. Oh, neat. And then at some point in high school, they started dating, and now they've been together 5 years. Now they want to get married immediately. And I'm like, my first reaction is graduate college before you get married. Because who wants to walk down the wedding aisle before you You walk down a wedding aisle before you walk down the graduation aisle. It almost makes no sense to me. The aisles have an order. You know what I mean? You got to walk down the aisles in the right order. Graduation aisle, wedding aisle. And anyway, but this young boy is so wonderful that I'm like, okay, you could get married at 21. They're going to get engaged next year, get married at 21. And by the way, I got married at 23, and it's a very similar pattern to what they are doing and what we were doing. I met my wife, I was 15.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
It was the eve of my 16th birthday, and so high school sweethearts. And that night, after talking to her for 3 hours, I turned to my friend, she left, and I said, I'm marrying her. I was 15. Anyway, so they're following in that pattern, high school sweethearts, whatever, and soulmates. So Benji gets 100 on his like biochem, some like impossible midterm that no one gets 100 on, and it's a really bright kid. And to celebrate, my daughter Audrey took him out to La Marais Steakhouse in New York and bought him a steak dinner as his like gift and reward for doing this huge achievement. And then she texts me. She says, Daddy, I took Benji out. Da, da, da. And first she broke the news to everyone on the family chat. We're all like, yay, that's amazing, great. And then privately she texted me, I took him out to La Marais. I charged it on your credit card. $200. She didn't even say how much. And then she goes, but I Venmo'd you. And I'm like, oh, you didn't have to Venmo me. You don't have to pay me back. I'm happy to take him out to celebrate this achievement. She goes, no, you don't have to. I go, how much was it? And she goes, forget it. And then I go to my Venmo and I see Audrey Gold paid you $200, which is also weird when your kids are paying you for stuff. But anyway, so I immediately Venmo not only that back, but I just Venmo'd $400. And then I texted her, and she gets it right away. I texted her, that's so that you could take him out to his next steak dinner when he gets his next 100, because this is a beautiful thing. And she was like, so touched by that. And she just wrote, thank you so much, Daddy, and hearts, and I love you, Dad. And just getting those texts, that feeling of getting love from your daughter is worth so much more than the $400 would ever mean. And I am not a rich man. I am not a wealthy man by any means. I do not have this as, by the way, a second home. I don't have this as a first home. But so $400 is meaningful to me. But what's more meaningful than any dollar amount is that love that you get from your child just in a little text, just thank you, Daddy, with 3 exclamation points. And you're just like, it warms the heart in a way that no financial reward can do, that nothing in show business can do. So it just was this reminder, this good feeling that I had last night, 1 a.m, texting my daughter, doing something for her that she didn't expect. She didn't expect me to pay for that dinner, let alone the next dinner. And then my little joke was, well, the better he does in school, the better chance he'll have of getting a good career, right. And then I don't have to support you guys. So I'm also encouraging that selfishly.
It's a little bit of investment.
It's a little bit of an investment. Just keep doing better and leave me out of it. But it was just this beautiful thing. And it was just another reminder of like... Family is everything. And the love you get from your children, is priceless. It's worth more than anything. And, I'm just, again, very lucky, very blessed that we raised these 4 incredible kids that are just, it's almost weird how perfect they are.
You said oldest daughter, right?
My oldest son is 23. All 4 of my kids are these special, incredible kids. In fact, everywhere I go, like we'll go to a Pesach program and people come over to me, oh, I love your comedy, I'm a big fan, da-da-da. Or let's say it's like after the show. Let's say I do the show and everyone's like, that was an amazing show, whatever. And I like those compliments. I appreciate it. But nothing, again, makes me happier when they come over to me and go, we were talking to your kids. You have the greatest kids. You have perfect kids. That is more than anything. Larry David came to my house for Shabbat dinner. It was a crazy Shabbat dinner. We had Larry David, Albert Brooks, Barry Weiss, and Nellie, Barry's wife. It was a legendary Eli Leonard, this young comedian, also wrote on Curb. Legendary Shabbat dinner. We sat there for hours and just laughed. I was doing impressions the whole time. Larry loves impressions, so he's just banging the table and just having the time of his life. His wife, as they were leaving, said, he never stays this long anywhere. Like, he just doesn't have this. He just gets up and, all right, let's go.
Is he exactly like he is on the show?
Exactly like he is on the show, yeah. But sweeter, like kinder. He's not, that show is, he's slightly obnoxious. But still unfiltered, but with like a warmth and hilarious also in person.
So he said something about your kids.
He then texts me the next day thanking me in this long text about how sometimes you go to these dinner parties and the food is good, but the company and conversation stinks, and sometimes the conversation stinks and the food, whatever. The conversation's good and the food stinks. He goes, this hit on everything. And then he said, and it was this whole long, very funny text. And he even did the pretties. He goes, on a scale of pretties with pretty good, he said, this gets 4 pretties. Pretty, 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 pretty good. And you can't do better than 4 pretties in the Larry David world. So he said, 4 pretties this got. And then he said, and you're hilarious, and your kids are fantastic. And again, the you're hilarious thing was like, wow, Larry David just said I'm hilarious. But the your kids thing, that was like worth a billion times more than the you're hilarious.
So all my kids are real young, so I'm curious to ask you, what's it like when, especially for a daughter, for her to start dating? Is that an adjustment?
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing in the world.
I would think, yeah.
It's the craziest thing. You go from, I'm changing their diapers. And by the way, it happens like that. And let me give you some advice to the people out there, because everyone that was older than me, when I was in my 20s, we got married at 23, started having kids at 30. 30 to 40, we had the 4 kids. And in that time period, you know how it is. It's just chaos. It's mostly just torturous work and chasing after them and cleaning up and making sure they don't die. And it's just like constant stress and pressure. And you're just like, this is a nightmare, with the cute parts and the cuddling and all the fun and the playing. But overall, hell on earth. And you just want it to end and get out of it and just rest and sleep and whatever. But everyone who was older than me said to me, listen to me, savor it. I know it's tough and challenging and difficult. Cherish every second with these little things, because it's not only the best time of your life to have little kids, but and everyone does this like that. It'll just go like that, and like this feels like an eternity. Every minute feels like a decade. Trust me, it'll like that. Just savor it. And I don't listen to anybody, so I didn't listen. Boom, it's over. 2 of them are out of the house, which is misery. You'll see when your first kid leaves the house. How many kids do you have?
3.
Okay, so with 4 kids, when just one of my kids left the house and went to Israel for a year and then went to college, and now he's graduating in May, the minute he left, the energy level of the house dropped by 40%. The quiet level of the house, just everything. This is 1 out of 6 humans. There's 4 kids and 2 of us. 1 person leaves, it should be 1/6.
Right.
What percentage is 1/6?
17%. 16%.
Something like that. See, that's why he's got the big house. It should be an adjustment of 15 to 20%, and it's 40. It's literally almost half of the energy just goes, and you're just like, why is it so quiet in here? He's not that loud, Brandon. Why is it? You just feel it. And then the second one leaves, and then it's another like 30%. Now you're down to like a very low energy, low percentage, almost like quiet house. And now there's 2 to go. So I have 1 more year with Darren, and then 3 more years with Emily. I am dreading the the 3 years. I don't want this period of my life to end where that empty nest thing happens. And it's not, I can make jokes. I don't want to be with my wife alone. I could do all that. It's not that. It's that all I know now is my kids and family. I don't even remember ever being single or even married without kids or anything. My whole life is kids. And to not have kids anymore, you don't have kids anymore. I already don't have kids. I already have adults. But to not have them in your house, and what nerve these kids have to get up and just say, later, dude. That's a lot of nerve. I understand it's a part of life. You go to college, whatever, you get married. But it's almost like, how dare you, after everything I did for you, you're just going to pick up and leave me alone? I did everything for you. And they just leave. So again, the message is savor every moment, even when it's not fun, even when there's screaming and yelling and the place is a wreck. Enjoy that moment because it is the best time, and they will leave you. They will leave you. It's so weird. You think, if you're lucky enough to have a wife or a husband that doesn't leave you, then, oh, wow, I had a good marriage.
The plan is to build tents out back so the kids stay.
To be where?
To build tents.
To build
out
tents.
back, yeah.
No,
So
the people who can afford to have compounds with their family and that's an ideal life.
So I saw a stat. It said that by the time your child is 12, you spent 90% of the time.
I saw that, but that's not a Jewish stat. Because they're not talking about Sukkot and Pesach and Shabbos and they're talking about Christmas and Thanksgiving. That's a goyish stat if I've ever seen one. And I saw that and I was like, a year with my kids? No. I know it sucks that they're not living here, but I'm not going to be just spending a year with them. We're going to have a million Shabboses together, and every holiday we're going to be together. And yeah. So maybe it's, I don't know, maybe 8 more years with them.
Got it. Okay, so you spoke
Either way, it sucks.
You spoke a lot about family.
Yeah.
The first on your list was God.
Yeah.
So
God is first. By the way, good for
you.
You wear a kippah during the podcast.
I do. You know why I started wearing a kippah? So you wrote an article, which I bumped into a few days ago, on someone attacking your family in the street or screaming at one of your children.
A hate incident by Elon Gold. You can Google it. This was before the daily hate incidents that we're dealing with now.
So I spent some time in yeshiva in England. And over there, the anti-Semitism is insane. And my grandparents lived in France, so I experienced some of that. But England was just horrible. You couldn't walk 30 feet without getting someone yelling at you. This was probably back in 2012, 2013. No,
wow.
Maybe even earlier than that. Yeah, when I was there. It was bad. And then around 2020, it just kind of felt like America is becoming Europe. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm going to wear a yarmulke. It wasn't for religious reasons. It was Jewish pride reasons.
Good for you.
I thought...
Yeah.
You got...
Jewish pride. Well, this is for the hostages, which I cannot believe that this is just months and months and months of pure hell on earth. And I don't have the solution, but the only thought I had the second this happened, because I have almost an obsession with just the notion that someone can be held captive. Let's even remove the torture, because God knows what kind of torture and rape and what they're actually going through. Let's remove that. Just the idea of being taken from your home, from your life, plopped into some dungeon, tunnel, whatever. The sheer boredom, the
being confined like that, yeah.
Being confined like that, what it does to your mental capacity to just stay focused and live in life when you're just staring at a wall all day, all night, let alone starved. And so it makes me crazy. So crazy that when Gilad Shalit, one soldier, was taken and held for 5 years, every single morning I prayed, I davened for his release, like a very specific prayer. Every single Friday night, I dedicated my Kiddush to him being freed and back home with his family for years. Every Seder, I would say, we're here celebrating a Seder, but empty seat for Eliyahu, also an empty seat for Gilad, because it's crazy that he's being held by Hamas and not with his family.
That's like a 5-year process.
5 years
Right.
of praying. I literally put his name into my phone contacts and said, one day I'm going to call him. I know it. And everyone's like, he's dead and he's never. And I went, no, I'm going to call him one day. By the way, ending to the story, haven't called him yet. But the good news is he was freed. Haven't gotten his number yet, but I will do it one day.
You haven't.
I want to get his number and I want to call him.
Have you tried?
I haven't asked people, but I do want to do that.
Okay, so we'll post this. We'll put it out.
Yeah,
there.
get me Gilad Shalit's number and text it to Ellie, not me. I don't want you having my number. And then you'll give it to me, and then I'll call him. And when I call him, I'll tell him the story that I put your name in without the number and said, one day I'm going to hit call. And anyway, the good news with that is that he was released. But the anguish that I felt for him and his family was a lot to deal with. And it was an obsession. This is times 200 something. This is women, children, elder. This isn't a soldier. This is unfathomable that this many people are being held. And my only thought is like, can't all of Israel, every single citizen of Israel, just go in there, with the IDF helping out and just leave no stone unturned until they find them and bring them home? Because that's what I would do. And I'm not saying anything negative like this is what they should be doing. That was a thought.
So you feel like the war is taking a long time?
It's taking way too long. And
it's a small area.
It's a tiny area. That's why I'm saying just if millions of people just went in and went, where are they?
I don't know if that would help. You'd end up with a lot more hostages.
There would be a lot more hostages and a lot more dead. So this doesn't really make any sense.
Right.
But that's my feeling. Like, shouldn't
understood.
everyone just run in there and go, where are they? And by the way, with millions of people going in there, you can sort of, yes, there would be hundreds of thousands more dead. And then more taken captive. It'd be the worst. It's the worst. I am not a military strategist.
Right. You're sharing a feeling.
I'm sharing a feeling that you should just be tearing down every door in Gaza until you find these people. That's what I would do. I would just run in there. I don't care if I died. I can't bear the thought of someone being held. It's rough. Anyway, see, I told you this isn't a comedy podcast.
Well, you bring a lot of comedy in, so
Yeah.
it's good. But I've had this thought, because I have interviewed a couple comedians, or a couple people who consider themselves comedians, and that there's a...
I'm sure they'll be happy to hear that. Well, I'm glad I did that podcast. Yeah. Cut to 3 weeks from now. So I had Elon Gold here. He considers himself to be a comedian. He really considers himself to be a comedian.
Well, the good news in your case is that many people consider you to be a comedian.
That's
as well.
good. The more people who
good.
consider you to be a comedian,
Yes.
the more real it is that you are one.
By
the way, isn't that life that
Yes.
people have to consider you
Yes.
a doctor? And then
Yes.
you got to get the degree and all that.
Yes.
But if people consider, I consider you a doctor,
Yes.
then you're going to go, and trust. It's all about people considering and the trust.
Have any of your children,
I have kids.
have any of them kind of gotten to comedy?
Baruch Hashem, no, because it's a rough business. They're all funny, though, in their own way, and they all have a great sense of humor. And my youngest daughter is like a bit of a performer, but I hope she doesn't go into it.
Got it.
It's not any. I've been at this 30 years, and look where I'm at. I'm here.
So the idea I was sharing is that maybe this is like kind of the Robin Williams idea that sometimes beneath comedy there's a depth. So who is it? I'll tell you. You know Mendy Pellin?
Yeah, of course.
You know this guy? So he did this video. That's where the conversation came up. So he did this video on child sex abuse where he
I saw it.
abused a molester. And a lot of people are like, who are you? You're supposed to be the funny guy. What are you doing
Right.
an interview on child molestation? And what I shared with Mendy when I interviewed him is that my association with comedians is that there's a depth beneath that. Like there's something that's, I want to say compensating. It's not the right word, but there's something inside them that they're saying, okay, we got to bring joy, we got to bring happiness, we got to bring lightness, we got to bring laughter to it. And he agreed with me. Do you agree with me?
Not for every comedian. There are some comedians that take their trauma and turn it into comedy, or that had a horrible life, childhood upbringing, whatever, and again, try to bring joy to the world. And then there are comedians like Martin Short, Billy Crystal, like guys, and Billy had trauma actually because his father died when he was very young, but guys who just do it out of the sheer joy of being funny and making other people laugh. Comedy is a selfish endeavor, and anyone that says to you, I just want to make others happy, it's bullshit. They're doing it because they need to do it. Like, I need to write jokes and tell jokes and be funny. I need to. It's a need, and it's all I want to do, and it's all I care about. All I care about are good bits and doing great sets and
So when is the need met? Is it when you come up with a good joke? Is it when you share it? Or is it when it's received well?
the whole process.
The whole process.
Yeah. But my comedy doesn't come from any trauma or any... I had a really very normal, which is almost an oxymoron, normal childhood, because everyone experiences some level of trauma and whatever. But just like incredible parents, 2 brothers, a middle child, and I don't know how to say it, but I was a happy kid. And I remember going into comedy as a 17-year-old, and it's just full of cynical, bitter, like so many comedians. And they resented my, not euphoria, but just my attitude. It was just up and, hey, let's go do some jokes and comedy. They just hated me right away because I was not like them. It's like, this one is not like the others. So yeah, the majority, that's why I agree with Mendy, the majority, but not all comedians are dark. Not all comedians are angry. You know, Bill Burr is one of our best comedians now. Mm-hmm. He's a great guy, but he's an angry guy. He admits it. He talks about it all the time. He'll show up and just be yelling about something. What's the matter? The driveway, and the guy I had to park in the... he's just angry at everything. And that's just him. That's who he is. And then he expresses his anger through these brilliant bits.
Has Judaism helped your comedy or not?
Judaism is synonymous with my comedy. Jewish and funny is the same. There's a reason that the greatest comedians, are Jewish and black. There's just a reason. Because
trauma?
Of the history of being an oppressed people, of trying to find the humor in all the darkness, whether it's slavery, the Holocaust, we all have this common thing. And it is generational trauma. So yeah, maybe some of it came from that. But there is a lot of that. But again, I don't, and if you see my comedy, it doesn't come from a dark place. It's edgy, and I like to make a point. I'm doing stuff about Israel now that definitely is edgy and controversial, and some people would deem offensive, which is another ridiculous thing. I never aim to offend. I only aim to get the laugh and make a point. So whenever someone's offended, whether it's a sex joke or something about Israel or Judaism, whatever it is, I always say to them, well, that joke is you offended me. And I'll say, well, I'm sorry, but that's your problem. You have to deal with being offended. I have enough problems to deal with. You deal with your problems, I'll deal with my problems. But just so you know, I didn't seek to offend. I just wrote this, I had this idea and I wrote it and I worked on it, and I just want to make people laugh and again, maybe make a point. Because there's no better point than through jokes, because when you're saying something and you want to get something across, while they're laughing, they don't even realize they're being taught something.
Right. Who's the guy who said a quote? He said, if you want to tell someone the truth, make them laugh first, otherwise they'll kill you.
Absolutely. And that's why so many rabbis, I think it's even in the Gemara and the
That's
Talmud,
true, yes.
open with a joke.
Open with a joke.
And then you get their attention, they're laughing, and it opens the mind. It's like mushrooms. It's either jokes or mushrooms. You could do one or the other. But, but my comedy, again, I started out doing impressions. It was always just fun, goofy comedy. Now it got to a different place. And then, of course, post October 7th, I just did 3 shows in Israel, sold out, not important. standing ovations. Who's counting? But anyway, and my opening line
For soldiers or?
I did one show for soldiers, but 3 just for people. Like the whole point was to go to to our homeland where our people are just beyond traumatized, just this beleaguered people, and just make them laugh. Just take a break from the hell and the horror and make them laugh. That really was the goal of that show. And I didn't make money. I donated to, the proceeds were going to this Comedy for Kobe, which is this great tour that Avi Lieberman, comedian, started by bringing 3 comedians to Israel twice a year. Every year. He's done it for over a decade. And the profits go to this foundation that helps terror victims and their family, based on Kobe Mandel, who was murdered as a young kid with his friend. And the family started this, again, comedy through healing and helping these. So I did those shows, but again, my opening joke was, it's so good to be home with my fellow genocidal apartheid colonizers. And it's like a dark joke, but they immediately laughed and cheered because it was this release of this like, oh, thank you. Someone just came from America where they're accusing us of these insanely absurd notions, the antithesis of truth. There's no genocide. We're preventing a genocide. There's no apartheid. Ask any Israeli Arab. And colonizers, as I say in my act, the only place Jews ever colonized was the Catskills. We're bungalow colonizers. That's about it. But, and Israel is a decolonization project, as anyone would know. So, but when you say that, it's like, whoa. But then that release of like, oh, he gets it. He gets us. He gets what we've been dealing with. Like, it's insane how the narrative is so twisted. It is so the opposite of truth. But that's a whole other conversation.
So have you been doing some shows in the U.S. where the audience maybe isn't as receptive to some of these ideas?
So that's a great question. I wouldn't do that kind of joke.
Not that joke.
Not that joke, but like...
just sharing the message, the point.
I make the point, like in my first special, Chosen and Taken, which was on Netflix for 4 years, now it's on Amazon Prime. I do this bit about the difference between Israelis and Jews. And in the bit I say, and that's in front of a mixed crowd, mostly non-Jews, and again, it's for Netflix and Amazon, so the whole world can see it. But before the joke, I say this sentence. I go, Israelis, they're not my people. I go, yeah, sure, technically, Israel is, the 3,000-year-old homeland of our people. But there's a big difference between Israelis and Jews like us. And the jokes are Israelis fight back, Israelis return fire, Jews return merchandise. It's just we're different people. Anyway, you could see the bit. But the point is, here I am about to do this comedy bit, and then I get to say this one sentence that, again, will resonate with people. Like, oh, it is 3,000 years? Oh, I thought they just got there in 1948. I thought they stole it. I thought Oh, no. We were there before everyone. Before the birth of Christianity and Islam. Jews were there. But back to your but your last question about how does Judaism affect my comedy? My comedy is so Jewish that it's literally sometimes Talmudic. Like my most famous bit is the Christmas tree bit, which is a piece of Talmud. And there's a reason it went viral, millions of views around the world. I get invited to perform Australia, based on one bit.
Right, it's neat that people understand that.
Yeah.
Meaning the general population understands
and then non-Jews go, I'm Christian, but I get it. And they don't get the depth of it because you have to study Gemara to understand and to really relate to what I'm doing, which is poking fun at all the idiosyncrasies and all the minutia and everything that the Talmud, the arguments that they make, and how sometimes a little nuts it is. But I do it out of love, and I do it from an insider that knows and loves, learning Torah and Gemara, not an outsider making fun. I always say it's poking fun as an insider. It's not making fun as an outsider.
How did you grow up?
How? Well... I ate and I slept, and then how did I grow up?
Like Jewish-wise, religious-wise.
Oh, okay. I grew up in the Bronx, first of all. Mm-hmm. And my parents, my mother was observant always, and my father wasn't. It came from a non-observant family. His father fled Europe just before. His mother said, "We should get out of here. I just have a feeling." Literally, my grandfather's 2 brothers, 2 sisters, mother and father murdered. So it's a good thing he got out. Or who would you have here sitting down right now at this podcast?
Some person who thinks he's a comedian.
Right, who considers himself. But anyway,
And then we'll leave it to the audience to determine what they think.
we'll see. Well, after this, they're going to be like, he's definitely not a comedian. That was some serious shit. So mom was more observant, and then dad became more observant for mom, which is the opposite of my marriage, where I grew up modern Orthodox. My wife grew up conservative, and she became more observant. Like she, keeps Shabbat for the most part. She, kosher, whatever. And so she sort of met me, but there's no friction or tension about the differences between that. And there was no, I didn't force her to go, "Oh, you got to be more religious." She just said, "Okay, so I think I'll try to be more observant and more in the modern Orthodox just for our kids so they don't get the mixed messages." So she stopped driving on Shabbat and all the big things. But so anyway, so then I grew up like that, observant. Both my brothers, way off the derech, we call it. They did not get into it. Younger brother, gay, and said, any sort of religion that calls me an abomination, I'm not going to get into. That being said, was so proud of being Jewish, like you. He didn't have the religious Judaism. He had that Jewish pride. And he also loved all the holidays and would show up for everything and for dinners. He wasn't angry, but he had a deep resentment of a community, especially in the 80s and 90s, that didn't accept him for who he was. And this book that said you're an abomination, I always tried to tell him. I don't think
it says the person is an abomination.
The act is. Very good. I explained that to him. And I actually said to him, first of all, abomination is could be a misinterpretation of a word, right? No one knows the exact meaning of every Hebrew word as they translated it. But
it uses the same word, I think, for shrimp or creepy crawlies.
Yeah. And I said, so they're not calling you an abomination. I go, but guess what, Ari? I would say to him, all sex is a sin. All sex except one very specific in a certain timeline within 2 weeks with the one person you're allowed to in a certain way. Any other sex is a sin and an abomination and all that stuff. Not just homosexual sex. Many types of heterosexual sex, even with your own wife at the wrong time, is a sin. So don't take it personally. It's not God hates you, because that's not. If there's some rabbis who think God hates you, they're just wrong. God made you gay, made 10% of the world gay. But then God made more straight people so that more people can continue to be made. You have to have some straight people or the whole thing ends. But it's not that God hates you. God loves you. God made you what you are. But there's certain acts that you're not really supposed to do that are a sin, and certain acts that I'm not supposed to do that are a sin. Do we do them sometimes? Sure we do. Nothing on that?
No, that's very good.
No, it was also really sort of a joke at the end.
No, I liked it.
Okay, thank you.
No, I liked it. It was
if you were like my audience, we like that one. We're not going to laugh right now, but we appreciate it. We consider you a comedian.
What I was thinking about was that it's a very, what you said about earlier, that you can make a point through comedy that wouldn't be. You can make that point in front of 1,000 rabbis, and you'd still be there. They wouldn't throw eggs at you. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you can deliver that.
You're right. And then there'd be 4 or 5 rabbis that throw the eggs at me. He doesn't know what he's talking about. The gay ones. Hilarious. The ones that are so repressed and so angry that they can't act out on what they really want. Yeah, that's we've seen that with senators and rabbis and priests. The ones that are the most staunchly against homosexualities are the ones that are repressed homosexuals.
Right. The diehards. Yeah, I've made the point that if the religious community treated someone who's gay the same way they would treat someone who doesn't keep Shabbos, then they'd be pretty consistent with.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, gay people wouldn't feel unaccepted.
And I think it's changed, though.
It's
the
been
tide
changing,
has
yeah.
turned.
Depends on the community.
Depends on the community, but
Certainly for the Jews who grew up in the Bronx, yeah.
yeah, but even the modern Orthodox community, it's like. But anyway, as you were saying about, and if you read that article we were talking about that I wrote, this was after a hate incident, after one Gaza conflict, one summer thing where they were just, it's the usual, except without the horrors of October 7th. They're firing missiles. People in Israel are all in shelters. They're getting killed, wounded. And then, of course, Israel has to retaliate. And because Hamas uses human shields and all the stuff that we all know, more on their side die than, as if there's some moral equivalence due to disproportionate numbers. It is beyond insane. When you look at any wars, it's like when the bad guys attack and then more on their side die, that's just war. And there's such a difference between casualties of war, all tragic, and genocide, But anyway, so...
Intentions matter just a little
Oh,
bit.
intentions matter. Yeah, they're everything. So, what was my point?
Wow.
Wait, you were talking about that they... okay, yeah. That you can make the point for, you can make the case that... Oh, about me growing up also.
Yes, exactly. That's where we started. Yeah.
When I grew up, and back to the story about the
You're
hate
talking about
incident,
the hate
That's
incident. Okay.
that I wrote that not to tell people what happened, which is just a simple incident, as it was explained to me by the cops.
Was it in New York or LA?
It was in LA. We were walking home from a Shabbat dinner, and dressed in our Shabbos best and kippahs and everything, and this Mercedes truck pulls up, and 4 Middle Eastern guys were in there, and one gets out of the car and gets close to us and looks at me and goes, "I hope your children die, just like you're killing children in Gaza." And I was like, hey, the only thing I'm killing is audiences. I mean, what the hell are you doing? Me? I have nothing to do with that conflict in 2014, and my kids were there, and they were little at the time, so they were freaked out. I mean, this was like, is he going to kill us? They were just, the little ones were crying, and the big ones were just so rattled and shaken by they never experienced anti-Semitism, and the whole "I hope you die" is so crazy. And we called the police, and of course, a Jewish cop shows up, the one Jewish cop in LA. Back in the station, they were like, "Hey, Schwartz, one of your people got yelled at. You want to go calm these guys down?" So guy comes in, literally Jewish police officer, Schwartz, and he goes, "Oh my God, I know you." Of course, I get recognized by the Jewish cop. "You host the Chabad telethon." "Yeah, thank you." Anyway, it's like, "What happened?" And then he explained to us, after I told him what happened, that this was not a hate crime, it was a hate incident.
What's the difference?
The difference is, a hate crime, you either get attacked or you are threatened to be attacked. Like, I'm going to kill you.
it.
I'm going to attack you. He was just wishing that we get killed. He was hoping. So now it's an incident. He didn't say, I'm gonna get. I hope someone kills
So what's
you.
the practical difference for him, whether it's a crime or an incident? You can't do anything about an incident?
You can't do anything about an incident, and a hate crime is like FBI, and then, there's an attack, God forbid someone gets killed, hurt, whatever. That's a hate crime. But, and that's also, that's punishable by, prison time and all that stuff. But a hate incident is just an incident. There was someone that wrote me after I wrote this article, and they said, the same thing happened to me when there was a chalk swastika put on the side of a building, and the police were like, "Well, it's chalk. You could just look at that. It's gone. It's chalk." I'm like, it's like, come on, it's still a swastika. It doesn't matter if it's permanent ink or not. But so
You were saying you didn't write the article?
yeah, so I didn't write the article to tell people what happened, although it was a little warning of like, hey, we felt safe our entire lives. Mm-hmm. But just so you know, these kind of things are happening, and who knows how it's going to escalate, and could be not just verbal, but physical attacks. So it was my little warning, But the main reason I wrote it is to make the case for Israel. So it started with this little couple of paragraphs about what happened, and then it's this case for Israel of like, why would this ever happen? Why do people hold the entire Jewish people accountable for what the military in Israel is doing to defend its people? It would be like going over to Americans on the street during any war, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, just go, you goddamn Americans, you're killing civilians. I'm not in the army. I didn't say to do this. I don't sanction it.
Yeah, you may be protesting against it the next morning.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't know how I feel. I could be one of those lefty Jews, the lunatics, the peace now people, the if not now, idiot, loser, garbage people. I could be a Naturi Karta, garbage person. But it doesn't matter if I support Israel or not. I am not responsible for Hamas attacking and for Israel retaliating and trying to protect its citizens. That is not the responsibility of every Jew. It's not the responsibility of every American. And I wrote this piece to make that case. But my point that I really wanted to make, which finally came back to me, was that it is so weird that our generation is the generation that did not grow up with anti-Semitism. But my father's generation grew up knowing his father's entire family was murdered because they were Jewish. And now my kids' generation all of a sudden woke up. My 16-year-old said to me in November, just seeing the world react to this massacre on our people, and instead of being, defending us and seeing who the real victim is here, being so against us, gas the Jews, all that.
Right.
My 16-year-old said, oh, now I get why the Holocaust happened. I get how it happened. I get how the world let it happen. The world is really against us. And for my kids to see what happened on October 7th and then the world's insanely twisted reaction to October 7th, they are experiencing real anti-Semitism. And when I was a kid, I heard about the Holocaust. I knew about my grandfather's family, but I didn't experience anything any more than, hey, Jew bastard, in the Bronx, which is just a bully going, hey, fatso. Like, it doesn't matter what he's calling me. Hey, I've been called faggot too. It's not because that guy is homophobic or, hey, Jew bastard, because he's anti-Semitic. It's just a bully trying to, just bully a kid. It doesn't mean they have...
It didn't feel as personal.
It's not personal, and you know that it doesn't come from a hateful place. Oh my God, he called me a fatso. This guy hates fat people, whatever. Not that I was ever fat. But I'm saying those kind of words, fatso, whatever the word is, that's just like, that's what I experienced as a kid. Jew bastard, whatever it was. And a few times in my entire childhood. I never knew the entire world wanted all of us dead. I was not aware of that. I knew there were Nazis that wanted us dead. Right. I knew there were pogroms. I didn't know. My kids now have to have this on their head. They were the happiest, sweetest, most beautiful kids. They still are. But now they have this hyper awareness, and a little bit of anger is seeping in. They're angry at the world.
And some fear, yeah.
And fear, and then some fear.
Yeah. You know which video messed with me after October 7th? The one where the plane landed in Kazakhstan and they were checking people's passports.
Oh, that was rough.
That was like, oh shit.
That was rough.
Yeah.
And then they all...
And no one did anything.
No one did anything.
They just kind of bum rushed the
airport. Looking for the Jews.
It's like, let's look at passports for Jews.
Looking for the Jews. Yeah. Well, remind me not to book my next vacation there, Kazakhstan. That's where are you going for your Pesach program? Kazakhstan. They have a beautiful Pesach program over there. I'll be performing. Anyway, so it's very upsetting that my kids have to now cope with this fear and realization that they're hated for being born Jewish. It is such a crazy thing as a kid or teenager or whatever to deal with, and something I never had to deal with. But
my question about how Judaism affected your comedy, I understand it influenced it in terms of a lot of the content. I'm saying, let's say your observance of it, or now post-October 7th, taking a very strong stance in Israel, those kind of decisions, how it affects the career aspect, the business aspect of comedy.
Well, everybody thinks, the Jews run Hollywood. And even Dave Chappelle said on Saturday Night Live, the notion of the Jews controlling Hollywood is absurd. Like, it's ridiculous to think that. But then he did the joke, but there's a lot of Jews, you know, and that's true. There's a lot of Jews. And why shouldn't there be in an industry that a few Jews started? Like, literally, Barbra Streisand just gave this great speech at the SAG Awards where she named all the Warner brothers with their original names. It was like Warner-Sowski or whatever it was. And Ezra, this one was now Louis B. Mayer, was really Meyerowitz or whatever. And he goes, and these few people who left not only persecution in Europe, but couldn't get work in New York as doctors because hospitals weren't allowing Jewish doctors, as anything. So they moved out west and pioneered the film business. The fact that Jews started Hollywood, they literally started Hollywood, means they should be running it. They're not. They're not controlling it, or I would be doing better. I wouldn't be doing this podcast right now. I'd be too busy for it. But they should be running Hollywood because they started it. It's like going, you know, the blacks, they control the hip-hop industry. Yeah, they started it. They should control it. But anyway, so there's that. The Jews control Hollywood. Completely not true. There is no cabal of Jews. There's no meeting. But there are a lot of Jews who succeed in Hollywood, in this industry that we pioneer. That doesn't help me being like the big Jew comedian who literally not only identifies as being Jewish, but it's so much of my act and so much of my persona and my material. Seinfeld, who's like the Jewiest of Jew guy, never talks about being Jewish.
Right.
Ever in his act.
Right.
He
He's
doesn't
a very, very
say
Jewish
the word.
personality.
He is the most Jewish personality. The entire show, Seinfeld, is from a Yiddish cup. It's written with Jewish minds. Larry David, him, and all the writers. Larry, by the way, talks about being Jewish a lot on Curb. But Jerry, I think, mentioned it once, that dentist thing. Does this offend you as a Jew, this joke? No, it offends me as a comedian. It's like a famous line. Never talked about George Costanza. He was not Italian. He was Jewish. It was based on Larry David. You know, they just couldn't have 4 Jews in New York. No one would watch it. They already were worried that America wouldn't watch this very New York intellectual Jewish show. And at first they weren't. It was almost canceled like 10 times, I think.
Right.
Oh, yeah, it was doing terrible in the ratings. And then it just, you know, great comedy will always catch on. You know, a great bit will always go viral. A good bit won't go as viral. An okay bit, no one will watch. But great comedy always gets an audience. People share it. They want to see. You got to see this. They talk about it, whatever. So his comedy, though, Jerry's comedy, the most Jewish guy on earth, Jerry Seinfeld, the Jewiest of Jews, never talks about it. And for me, it's almost all I talk about. It's like I talk about being Jewish, about our rituals, customs, heritage, about Israel, about holidays, and also I talk about marriage and other stuff, and then just human behavior stuff. And I love to talk about anti-Semitism. Love talking about that because again, there's nothing.
Recently or always?
Always. Because I'm still, the more I got to learn, even though I didn't experience as a kid, the more I realized the world really does hate us. And you just look at inquisitions and crusades and pogroms and a Holocaust, and you go, oh wow, this is historic. This is always happening. And then Israel, I became obsessed with Israel when I was 30. I didn't care about Israel for my entire childhood. I knew it was our homeland. I knew it was the birthplace of our people and of my mother. My mother was literally born there in 1936 when it was called Palestine. I have a joke. I say, you know, she showed me her birth certificate. It says Palestine. I go, my mother's a Palestinian Jew. She throws rocks at herself. Anyway, but even though she was born in Israel, even though I know that Israel's the birthplace of the Jewish people, I didn't care about it any more than my black friends care about Africa so much and think about Africa and talk about Africa. It doesn't really matter where you came from. It's where you're living now, what your life is, and whatever. And then at 30, the first Intifada happened. And I immediately just went, whoa, why are they blowing up buses and pizza stores? What is happening? And I remember thinking, and it kept happening. I remember thinking, this is like a slow Holocaust. There'll never be another systemic Holocaust with just 6 million in countries. But what's with this slow Holocaust where you can't control it? There is no army that could wipe out lone terror attacks or, lone wolves and these little attacks or big attacks, but, they keep
Especially if
happening.
someone's willing to kill themselves.
Especially if they're willing to kill themselves. So why is this happening? And then I did a deep dive, did all the research, the history of the conflict, the history of Israel, and I realized, oh my God, this is just, again, the world's oldest hatred. And when you learn things, there's so many takeaways, like just this sentence that I thought of after really studying the conflict, that Palestine wasn't named by or for Palestinians. It wasn't named for them, and it wasn't named by them. It was named by the Romans, who named it after the Jews' biggest enemy, the Philistines, to remove any trace of Jewish history and heritage to that land. They purposely expelled the Jews and then renamed it to just erase the history of us. And then it was like Yasser Arafat who co-opted the term and just used it again as he uses. And he didn't even come from there; he's Egyptian. And like Hamas just uses the Palestinian people as pawns to their agenda of just eradicating a Jewish state. But, when you realize all these things and you're like, and you realize all the lies out there, again, stolen land, the land was not stolen.
How do you make sense of it? If your kids ask you about anti-Semitism, how do you make sense of it?
That's a big, deep question. I don't know how to make sense of hatred other than what I say is that, sadly, the way human behavior goes, everybody hates everybody. Like, for example, even two best friends sometimes will talk shit about their best friends with other people, even though they love them and they're best friends. Even kids don't talk to their parents. Parents disown their kids. Brothers and sisters, it fights over everything. Money, this, that, everything. How many fights over wills are there? We're now family members. Since the first family. So if people in your own bloodline that you are so intimately related to, your family, I'm not talking to them, and I hate them. If there's hatred in family and friends, of course there's going to be hatred in nations and countries and peoples and different ethnic groups, because that's just human behavior. It's sad, but human behavior is to hate the other. And especially when you don't know the other. And then the worst thing is when you're fed lies and you grew up with this false narrative that the other has stolen from you, has killed you, then of course you're going to grow up hating. So you can make sense of hatred, but it still doesn't make sense.
So one of the things I've wondered is if the Jewish people would still be around thousands of years later, if not for anti-Semitism.
Would they still be around?
Would we still be around?
We will always be around. Oh, you mean if not for?
If not for anti-Semitism.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think, again, it's a terrible thing to realize, but it's almost like God every now and then has to send us a reminder. This is what you're fighting for. This is why you should be united, not divided. I mean, you look at Israel right before October, and it was a wreck.
Yeah, exactly.
Facing civil war, hundreds of thousands protesting, and I don't know, by the way, who was right, who was wrong on that side, but there was a discord. It was literally heading into civil war. And then all of a sudden, boom, countries united.
I'm wearing my yarmulke because of anti-Semitism. You're wearing that chain.
Yeah.
Because of anti-Semitism.
Absolutely. So and I wear a yarmulke too. I never liked to mix my personal beliefs and faith and religion with business. You know what I mean? Like there's some doctors who work at hospitals who wear their yarmulke and some that take it off because they don't want the patients to there's so many reasons I don't wear a yarmulke every day. I always keep one in my pocket and I put it on when I daven or when I eat usually, and obviously in shul and Shabbos and all that I wear it. But when I go on stage, I don't wear it because I don't not only want to mix it, so for a mixed crowd or a non-Jewish crowd, I don't want them to think I'm some religious weirdo. Comedy's all about relating to your audience, you know? And for a Jewish crowd, there's a few reasons I don't wear a yarmulke for the Jewish crowd. I don't want to be an example of what Orthodox Judaism is, because I am not an example. I talk about sex in my act. I curse every now and then. So I don't want to, I try to be a Kiddush Hashem. I try to sanctify God's name in everything I do, and even in my shows. But I still talk about things. I still get down and dirty. I still am edgy. And that's not, a yarmulke represents this holiness. And if I'm not speaking holy words and I'm like talking about, banging the wife or whatever it is I'm talking about, like, well, he shouldn't be wearing a yarmulke when he talks about that. But then also, I don't want to alienate the non-observant people in the audience who are just like, oh, so he's religious, and again, I can't relate to him.
Oh, interesting.
It's just, a yarmulke is such a statement. But now, like you, I want to make that statement, not out of religion, out of Jewish pride. I want,
Well, I'll give you a bright white one so they see.
Thank you. Because for me, what I do for religion is I put on tefillin every day, and that's between me and God.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I keep kosher and I keep Shabbat and all that stuff. But wearing a yarmulke is a symbol that you are a holy person, and you have to set an example to even walking down the street. If I walk down the street and a car like almost hits me, and I go, "What the fuck are you doing? You fucking!" I would start screaming. I'd be like, "Oh my God, I'm wearing my yarmulke, and now I'm a chil Hashem, and I'm an embarrassment." And I'm representing, I feel like I'm representing the Jewish people and Orthodox Jewish people. I don't like to have that confinement. I want to be free to be an asshole sometimes back. And right. I don't want to be judged based on, oh, he wears a kippah. So that's really why I don't wear it. All the reasons for comedy, for relating to audiences, because religion is personal, because it's the things I talk about aren't holy. And I think when you're wearing a kippah, you should be in a holier space. But for Jewish pride, I kind of do wear it. And it's funny that when nowadays everyone's taking off their yarmulke to walk to shul because it's dangerous. We literally are all vulnerable and could be under attack at any minute. I now do put my yarmulke on.
That's what I think is dangerous.
And walk to shul.
I think it's dangerous for us all to
take it off.
Take it off.
Very.
Yeah, I'll tell you what for
Very.
us all to take it off. It makes it more dangerous. But I'll tell you two things, and I know you gotta hop into something. So a couple of weeks ago, I was leaving my house in the morning with my kids, and they made kind of a ruckus, the door slamming and whatever. So someone who lives in the same complex there messages me, and just kind of an angry tirade about how my kids woke him up or something, 8:30 in the morning. And he said, as a man of faith, you should know better.
See?
So I said, okay. I said, thanks for the reminder that I'm walking around representing God. I needed that.
Right.
And I'll try to do better next time.
Wow.
So
you took the high road.
I definitely took the high road there.
Wow.
I definitely took the high road.
I would have been like, man of faith. I was addicted to porn. By the way, we didn't talk porn, not even once. But with only a couple of minutes left, I'll just say this about porn. Okay. Don't like it. I'm not kidding. I'm one of the few males that do not look at it. Did I? Sure I did. You got to see what's going on out there. But it
didn't pull you in.
It's not that it didn't pull me in. It disgusts me. And it's not about, it's degrading women. Some of the women are having a great time and they're choosing to do this. It's not about that. Right. First of all, penises. I don't like looking at penises. I don't want to look at penises doing their thing. The penises are disgusting to look at. Especially the giant ones. And then you feel inferior. But it's not that. It's you never.
You want a yarmulke for that?
You never finish watching porn and go, "Oh, that felt so nice. Right. That was such a good experience I just had watching this disgusting thing." And it is disgusting. By the way, give me some Cinemax softcore porn. I'm all in. I'm like, "Whoa, this is great," because it's sort of like the nicer. There's something about porn that is just gross. It's just disgusting. All the fluids are going around. It's like, it's not really pleasant to look at, and I don't like it. And when I used to look at it and watch it here and there, I always had the same feeling of like, oh yeah, this is like a turn on. Obviously, you're seeing naked people doing the thing that you want to do or be doing at that time. So it's like, yeah, it turns on all the receptors and all these receptors. but it still doesn't feel good. When you have an intimate experience with another person, you don't leave that going, ugh, I feel disgusting. It's like a bonding and it's a nice thing.
Yeah.
But porn and you see how easy it is to get addicted and to get hooked on
Yes.
it. You see that I could do this every day. I could do this 3 times a day. So who wants that? And who wants to have that bad feeling of, I feel like I violated myself.
It also affects sex life a lot. Have you heard? I think it's called
heard.
super stimulus response or
Yeah.
something, like a super stimulus. So you do it with butterflies, where they'll make fake butterflies, and the butterflies are more attracted to the fake butterflies than the real butterflies because they're more colorful, they're brighter, they're
Right.
larger. So the same
There's
thing.
also a great thing that I heard, because it's so sad that kids or even young teens watch porn, and that's how they learn about sex.
Yeah, the sex education. Yes.
And the best line I ever heard was, watching porn to learn about sex is like watching NASCAR to learn about driving. It's like,
Perfect.
that's not how you learn. That's not how you learn it. And I always it's an awkward conversation, but I always sort of hint to my kids, don't watch the crap that you could see anytime on the internet. It's not good for you. I just try to say that because those conversations are awkward. And, teenage boys got to look at things. You got to look at that stuff. What teenage boy doesn't want to see a pair of tits? For me, it was like my father had this stash of Playboys we lived in the Bronx, and one time, this is just in his defense that he didn't go out and purchase the magazines. There was a stack of them that someone left in the incinerator, in the garbage. My dad went, oh, wow, look at all these. And he took them home. And then he put them up in the closet and hid them. But then, of course, I went looking, and then I go, oh, my God, look at this. That, to me, was okay. You're just looking at pictures, and it's kind of nice. It's like that softcore. But there is just something.
Oh, so the internet's much different than that stuff.
What is it? And then we have to go. What is it?
The variety, the intensity, the endlessness of it. First of all, video. I mean, it's just so much more. Like, suck someone in. There's an organization called Fight the New Drug.
Mm-hmm.
They're out of Utah, but they do everything to take the religiousness out of their message.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, we're the new drug, but really the old drug, right? Pornography has been
Right.
around since people can carve into stone. But he said, but the internet is a new drug. It's not the same thing. It's like crack cocaine compared to
By the way,
marijuana.
forget porn. Social media, you could say the same thing about.
100%.
Same thing about. And any addiction that takes you out of life and takes you out of being productive and having ideas. It's like, that's why Shabbos is the most beautiful gift of all. And that's why me and my wife and kids, phone off 25 hours. It's the connecting by disconnecting. And we just have the best Shabboses where it's just the meals and just playing basketball and ping pong and board games, whatever it is, and just having fun, just sitting around talking. Because every other meal, it's just this. Every other meal. Get off your phone, okay. And then a second later. And it's horrible. It's a toxic way to live. So Shabbos is a gift.
Yeah, it may have been created for right now,
For this moment,
for this period in history.
Shabbos.
Like, was Shabbos as necessary 100 years ago? I'm not sure.
Absolutely.
Like, now
100 years
it's-
ago, there was
Every day was
nothing
Shabbos.
to do ever. It was every day was Shabbos. I think we did well. Did we?
I think we did so well. And I think we did probably better than anyone has ever done. I don't think there's ever been a better guest on this podcast than me. I don't think you'll ever have a better guest. And you know that. And we're going to win bigly. We're going to win so bigly. It's going to be a bigly wiggly. We're going to do.
Did you have a podcast named The Worst Podcast Ever Recorded? Did someone put a podcast out with you with that name?
I don't think so. I had a thing called It's Not a Show because I did this thing over COVID where I would interview people on Instagram Lives, and then we cut it together and made this little thing called It's Not a Show because Jeff Garland from Curb would keep coming on the show as a guest and go, it's not a show what you're doing. This is not a show. Everyone thinks they have a show. You think you have a show.
Yeah,
Everybody thinks they have a show. What you have are 2 microphones.
Exactly.
You don't have a show.
Right.
Anyone could go to Radio Shack, Best Buy, B&H, get microphones. They have microphones. They don't have shows.
This is an excuse to have a conversation.
That's all it is. I would never talk to you if there wasn't this in front of me.
Exactly.
You think I would talk to you? No, I like you. You're a good man. You're doing good things. And more importantly, you've been through a lot and you came out the other side in a much better, more healthy, happy way, which is everything. You're an example to people who are going through whatever darkness they're going through to just find that light, baby.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on a serious podcast.
Anytime.
Like this and making
Next
us
time
laugh a little bit.
will be funnier.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.